Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto, Hinata and pregnant Hanabi have been in a secret polyamorous relationship? Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this and comment for next part. And now let's start the fanfic. Now I told Lord Hokage I'd help today and that's what I'm going to do. Metal can play with Boruto in the meantime, stated Lee. And before you say something like, I don't want our son hanging around a family like that, he's going to eventually, because Boruto and Metal will be in the same class. I love you Sakura, but Naruto, Hinata and Hanabi have made their choice and they're happy with it. There's nothing we can do about it, so we might as well accept it. Lee left the home leaving Sakura to think about what he said. Most of the day was normal for the Uzumaki family. Lee, Shikamaru and Sai had shown up to provide extra security and their children, along with Boruto were being supervised by the Uzumakis. Although he knew he was being overprotective, Naruto refused to leave Hinata and Hanabi alone until the issue with the Hyuga clan was resolved. Hinata and Hanabi didn't mind however, as it showed they truly did marry the best man in the Leaf Village. Anyone helping with security were also fine with this, because not only were their children being guarded by the strongest ninja in the village, but they also knew Hinata would provide quality childcare. They also couldn't deny it would give Hanabi plenty of practice for when her own child arrived. Unknown to the Uzumaki, there would be an unexpected visitor that day. Thankfully, it wouldn't be a hostile one. They heard a knock on the door and Hinata stood up. Hinata had agreed to answer the door from now on, as it allowed Naruto to protect Hanabi. She was surprised to open the door and see not just Lee but also Sakura. The latter of whom was looking very guilty. What's going on? Asked Hinata. Nothing bad I promise you, answered Lee. Do you remember how Lady Fifth was going to give Hanabi her checkups until the mess with the Hyuga clan was resolved? Yes, queried Hinata. In fact, I think she was going to give Hanabi one today. Sakura stepped forward. Lady Tsunade is unavailable today. She was going to reschedule, but I volunteered to give Hanabi a checkup. I know you probably don't want me in your home after the last incident, but if you'll let me, I'll happily check on how Hanabi's baby is doing. To Sakura's surprise Hinata smiled. Of course Sakura, come on in, said Hinata gesturing inside. But remember I'm not the one you need to convince. Sakura was just happy Hinata was one of the most forgiving people in the village. She stepped inside and followed her into the living room. Sakura, what are you doing here? Asked Naruto who was surprised to see her. She's come to give Hanabi a checkup. And while we agreed to make all our decisions together, I think the choice to let her do this rests with Naruto and Hanabi, stated Hinata. Sakura was fully prepared for both Naruto and Hanabi to kick her out. Naruto, about before It's okay Sakura, I'm not mad at you, Naruto stated calmly. You're not? Asked Sakura. We knew people might not react positively to this, so we prepared for the worst. Explained Naruto. In fact, I had a feeling you'd react the way you did, especially considering our history and my reputation as a pervert. Sakura chucked at this. Well, let's just say someone helped me see things from a different perspective, said Sakura thinking of her husband. Glad to hear it, because I don't want our friendship to end because of this, stated Naruto. I don't think it should either, said Sakura. Either way, I'm fine with you giving Hanabi and our child a checkup. In fact, there's no one I'd trust more, stated Naruto. But there's still one more person you need to convince. Sakura looked at Hanabi who was looking skeptical. If Naruto and Big Sister trust you, then I will as well, but I'm warning you, if you do anything to harm my child there isn't a healer in the entire universe who will be able to fix what I do to you. If you say so, laughed Sakura. She's not kidding, warned Hinata. I'd be careful if I were you. Noted, said Sakura a little more nervous. Sakura then gave Hanabi her checkup and despite the lack of equipment, was able to use her skills as both a medical ninja and a doctor to see how Hanabi's baby was progressing. Well, both you and the baby are healthy, and the baby is progressing as normal, said Sakura. Good to hear, said Hanabi. But if you want to know the gender, you'll have to wait till you can go to the hospital for a checkup, stated Sakura. We're fine with not knowing the gender, we want to keep it a surprise, confirmed Hanabi. That's fair, said Sakura. I just hope we haven't pulled you away from the hospital for too long, said Hinata. Actually, I asked for a personal day, stated Sakura. My visit here was of my own choice. In fact, Hinata, I was actually hoping to talk to you. Sure. What about? Asked Hinata. Well, actually I was hoping to speak privately. Would you mind if we went for a walk? Asked Sakura. I don't know Sakura. I don't want to leave Hanabi right now, stated Hinata. It's alright Hinata. Hanabi is more than safe with me, interjected Naruto. And I think having a talk with Sakura might be good for all of us. Lee had let Naruto know about the conversation he had had with Sakura that morning, especially with regards to how Lee thought Sakura wasn't considering Hinata's opinion on the matter. Because of this, Naruto was happy to let them talk privately. But what about the kids? Asked Hinata. I can't expect you to do all the childcare. I'm happy to watch them till you get back, answered Naruto. And it gives me plenty of practice, laughed Hanabi who had started playing with the children. Well, if you're sure, but I'll still try to be back as quickly as possible, stated Hinata. Sakura and Hinata left the house and began their walk around the Leaf Village. They walked in silence for a bit, as both felt awkward about starting the conversation they were about to have. Hinata then noticed a tea house and suggested they sit down to talk about everything. After they ordered some tea and dumplings, Sakura decided to cut to the chase. I think you know why I asked for a talk, stated Sakura. You want to ask about my relationship? Asked Hinata. Yes. It's come to my attention that I jumped to a negative conclusion based solely on my history with Naruto, stated Sakura. And I haven't really taken your feelings into consideration. Like Naruto said, we all expected you to react that way, laughed Hinata. Do you all just have a negative view of me now? Asked Sakura. No, we just know what you're like, laughed Hinata. Still, I've realized that I didn't have the full story, and I acted poorly, said Sakura. I know you already confirmed this the last time we spoke, but I think I just need to hear it again when we're alone. Is this really what you want? It is, more than anything in the world, answered Hinata. But why? To say you were in love with Naruto growing up would be an understatement. You were obsessed with him, so it amazes me you'd want to share him with anyone, stated Sakura. In every other case that would be true. If I saw another woman even flirt with Naruto, I don't think I could be held responsible for my actions, laughed Hinata. Then why did you make an exception for Hanabi? Asked Sakura. I think you already know the answer to that, answered Hinata. Lee did help me see logic to the situation. He reminded me of that mission we went on together to rescue Hanabi and the lengths you were willing to go to save her. Which included betraying Naruto. Lee also said that Hanabi might be the only person in the world you care about more than Naruto, stated Sakura. I wouldn't go that far, said Hinata. Don't get me wrong, I love Naruto with all my heart, but there's a special bond between an older and younger sister that can be greater than anything, which includes the responsibility an older sister feels towards their younger sister. I guess that's something I can't understand as I'm an only child, sighed Sakura. But I guess that means you'll do whatever it takes to make your sister happy. That's correct, confirmed Hinata. Even before Naruto and I got together I suspected she liked him as well. Because I could see she looked at him the same way I did. In fact, after Naruto and I got engaged I could see a lot of sadness on her face, because she felt Naruto would never be hers. I think she hoped her feelings would fade, but they never did. In the end, she was filled with guilt and felt the need to tell us the truth. So, one day she came to us and confessed she was in love with Naruto. To everyone's surprise, I immediately invited her to join us. Without asking Naruto if he was okay with this, asked Sakura. Yes, Naruto does express that he feels he had no say in the matter, but he wanted me to be happy, so he didn't fight it, stated Hinata. He also admits there was no point in looking a gift horse in the mouth. That doesn't surprise me at all, sighed Sakura. I'm also guessing Hanabi was overjoyed when you asked her to join you in Naruto. Overjoyed would be an understatement, laughed Hinata. Especially considering she feared I would hate her, but she's my sister, I could never hate her. And I'm guessing the rest is history? Asked Sakura. Pretty much. Hanabi moved in with us shortly after, and not only did we both grow closer with Naruto, but we also grew closer as sisters, said Hinata. If you don't mind me asking, why did you and Naruto still go ahead with your marriage? Because from what I can see, you're trying your best to treat everyone as equals. Asked Sakura. For a variety of reasons, stated Hinata. Our wedding date was close when Hanabi confessed, and we feared people would become suspicious if we suddenly called it off. Hanabi also didn't want to ruin our special day, and we all agreed this could help keep our polygamous relationship a secret. Not much of a secret now, joked Sakura. Well, again, we feared how the village would react upon finding out, stated Hinata. As you can see, our fears were warranted. Yeah, can't say I blame you for keeping it a secret, laughed Sakura. If I'm honest though, I'm kind of glad the secret's out, admitted Hinata. Really? But it's caused you guys so much trouble, stated Sakura. I know, but I sometimes feel keeping it a secret prevented Hanabi from being an equal part of the relationship, said Hinata. She even told me once that she often felt like a third wheel to Naruto in my relationship, but she didn't mind as being with Naruto made her happy. Is that why she had her own room in your house, to help keep the relationship a secret? Asked Sakura. That's correct. We also had special rules when it came to quality time, as I was Naruto's legal spouse, admitted Hinata. Sakura was surprised Hinata had been so open about her and Naruto's private time, as there would have been a time where Hinata would have fainted by just thinking of the topic. Sakura had a feeling she'd regret this, but she was now curious about how their relationship worked. What kind of rules? Did he spend 3 days with you and 3 days with Hanabi and he got you on the final day of the week? Asked Sakura. No, if Hanabi wanted to spend quality time with Naruto, I had to be there, answered Hinata. Wait, you mean you guys? Yes, we all spent time together, interjected Hinata, not wanting Sakura to finish her question. Isn't that awkward? Asked Sakura. It was at first, but we got used to it and we keep our minds on Naruto, stated Hinata. I'm guessing as his wife you still got alone time with him? Asked Sakura. I mean, you got pregnant a year ago. Yes, but I tried to limit the alone time to when Hanabi was away on missions so she wouldn't feel left out, confirmed Hinata. In fact, while I was pregnant with Boruto, we decided to amend the rules of solo quality time, because we knew Hanabi deserved alone time with Naruto as much as I did. If I was away, they could do whatever they wanted, stated Hinata. I think Hanabi was glad when I returned to mission work after Boruto was born. I'm guessing that's how Hanabi ended up pregnant? Asked Sakura. I'd say so, because I went away on a mission for a few days and a few weeks after I got back, we discovered she was pregnant. I wasn't happy, as we wanted to avoid this to keep our relationship a secret, but I guess it was going to happen eventually. I think Hanabi also liked the idea of having Naruto's child, can't say I blame her, said Hinata, thinking about her own child with Naruto. And that's what led to you guys deciding to make your relationship public? Asked Sakura. Yes, because we knew it would only be a matter of time before people found out, confirmed Hinata. I'm glad though, because it means no one has to keep their love a secret, and I feel this has made Hanabi an equal in our relationship. And because of that, I'm guessing you now split your time with Naruto evenly? Asked Sakura. What do you mean? Asked Hinata. He spends 3 days with you, 3 days with Hanabi, and you alternate Sundays, stated Sakura. No, we all share a bed now and we'll be turning Hanabi's room into a nursery for her child, Hinata clarified. Wait, so you mean all three of you? Yes, interjected Hinata. As I said, we're all equals. You know what? I don't want to know anymore. I still think it's gross, stated Sakura. You're the one who asked, stated Hinata. I didn't think you'd tell me. I thought you'd faint when being asked a question about your intimate life, said Sakura. I knew you'd gotten more confident over the years, but I didn't think you'd be this confident. Hinata chucked. Being with Naruto has allowed me to find confidence in myself I never thought I'd have, but I think inviting Hanabi to join us has allowed me to find even more confidence, said Hinata. Clearly, groaned Sakura. Realizing they'd gotten off track, Sakura decided to steer the conversation back to her initial question. So, do you think Hanabi's the only person you'd be willing to share Naruto with? Asked Sakura. Yes, Hanabi's my precious little sister and I want her to be happy. Being with Naruto makes her happy, so I'm more than happy for us to be a marriage of three. But to every other woman our Naruto is off limits, answered Hinata. How does Hanabi feel about all this? Asked Sakura. Admittedly, I think we'd both prefer to have Naruto to ourselves, but I think she's just happy she's allowed to be with and be loved by Naruto, especially considering he loved me first. We also know that given the circumstances, this is the best outcome we could ask for and we're both happy with that, answered Hinata. No offense Hinata, but I can't decide if you're the weirdest older sister in the world or the most considerate, stated Sakura. I can understand that. Hanabi herself feels I'm the greatest older sister ever for allowing this to happen, laughed Hinata. Can't imagine why, said Sakura sarcastically. Now convinced that the relationship between Naruto, Hinata and Hanabi was genuine, they spent the rest of their time at the tea house discussing other topics. When they were done, they headed back to the Uzumaki home. Sakura apologized to Naruto for her actions and admitted that she now believed their relationship was real. Naruto, however, admitted there was nothing to forgive, as he had never been angry at Sakura and was just glad they were still friends. Sakura was starting to see why the three of them worked together so well, as they were arguably the most forgiving trio in the village. Sakura then asked if she could stay for the rest of the day. It meant she could spend time with her son, it added extra security, and she could help anyone in case they got hurt. Naruto, Hinata and Hanabi had no objections and reminded Sakura that she was always welcome in their home. The day continued without much drama. Not a single Hyuga dared attack their home, and aside from the needs of the children the day was stress-free. Come evening everyone was preparing to leave, when they heard a knock on the door. As before, Hinata was the one who answered. Lord Sixth? Asked Hinata, seeing Kakashi on the other side. Good evening Hinata, may I come in? Asked Kakashi. I have good news. Of course, said Hinata, gesturing him inside. They headed back to the living room, where everyone else was present. Sensei, what's up? Asked Naruto. I have news. You would have heard about it by tomorrow, but I thought it was best I come deliver the news in person, answered Kakashi. You should have no more trouble from the Hyuga clan. You mean? Asked a hopeful Hanabi. Yes. Welcome to the Leaf Village. Hanabi Uzumaki, stated Kakashi. Hanabi was nearly brought to tears of joy. While they knew their issues with the rest of the village weren't over, she was just glad that tomorrow she'd be able to walk through the village a free woman. Naruto and Hinata also hugged her, because now, they felt no one could say she wasn't a member of their family. In their eyes, their family had gained a member and they would soon gain another in 8 months. And now that none of them had to worry about an attack from the Hyuga clan, they decided the next thing they would do was help Hiashi with the issues he was facing from the Hyuga elders. Now that her name was officially Hanabi Uzumaki, she was eager to step outside and continue life as normal. Well, as normal as life could be for someone in a polygamous marriage. Naruto, Hinata and Hanabi had let Hiashi know about the news and had agreed to come over to talk with the elders about what they could do regarding the next Hyuga heir. They just hoped the elders were willing to listen. After they were ready, Hanabi stepped outside and took what felt like the first breath of fresh air she'd had in years. How does it feel, Hanabi Uzumaki? Asked Naruto following her outside. Like the greatest thing ever, she answered before hugging. With Boruto in her arms, Hinata came outside and smiled at the sight before her. She was so happy that her sister could now go outside and be publicly seen as a member of their relationship. We'd better get going, interjected Hinata. We don't want to keep father and the elders waiting. Of course, I just hope they agree to our suggestion, stated Hanabi. I think they will, because like with us, they'll know this is the best outcome they can get, said Naruto. And if they don't, that's their loss. Agreed, said Hanabi rubbing her stomach. Before they left, both Hanabi and Hinata activated their Byakugans to ensure that they were safe to leave. While they were confident word had spread about Hanabi's name change, they still wanted to make sure no one was watching them. After they confirmed there was no one around, they left. They headed to the Hyuga compound, but not before dropping Boruto off at Kurenai's, who had agreed to watch him for the day. When they reached the Hyuga compound, the guards let them in without hesitation. One of them even congratulated Hanabi on her escape and her pregnancy. They wasted no time heading to Hiashi's chambers, who was waiting for them with a group of Hyuga elders. Good, you're here, please have a seat, Hiashi requested. They all sat down on the same side as Hiashi and faced the elders. The elders didn't look happy, especially the main one, who was Hiashi's father. You all have some nerve coming back here, especially after the disgrace you've brought to the clan, stated the main elder. They are no longer members of this clan, and I only did what any good husband would do, stated Naruto. And from what I understand, you wanted to use my child for your own selfish gains. Mind your tongue, said another elder. No, he has a right to speak just like any of us, and not just because I was also against what you wanted to do with Hanabi's unborn child, interjected Hiashi. It was the only way to preserve the honor of the Hyuga clan, after the disgraceful actions of your daughter, said the main elder. It would have allowed us to strengthen the main house and uphold our traditions by raising the child as a Hyuga. Grandfather, please understand, Hanabi was cut of. Don't call me that, interjected the main elder. After everything you've done, you are no longer my grandchild. Do not speak to her that way, growled Hiashi. I've let you dictate the lives of my children for too long. As head of the clan, I'm putting my foot down. My children are no longer yours to order around. And while they may not be Hyuga anymore, they are still my daughters, meaning they will always be welcome in my home. I recommend you accept that, as they will continue to be a part of my life whether you like it or not. The elders could tell that Hiashi's decision was final, and even if they all voted against him, he would refuse. Despite his responsibilities as clan leader, it was clear he was now choosing to put his responsibilities as a father first. Very well, but you still have responsibilities to the clan, said the main elder. With both your daughters now Uzumaki, they can no longer be heir to the Hyuga clan. And sadly, the next in line to be clan leader passed away during the war. A tragedy that saddens all of us. While the clan elders were generally cold and emotionless, even they couldn't deny they were saddened by Neji's passing, as he was a true prodigy and would have made a great clan leader in Hinata and Hanabi's place. So, it is your responsibility to pick the next heir, clarified the main elder. That is why we are all here, stated Hiashi. Naruto has come up with a solution that can satisfy us all. He is no Hyuga, why should we listen to anything he has to say? Asked the main elder. Because I think this decision is most fair, answered Hiashi. Fine, we'll hear him out, but if he's going to suggest one of his children be clan heir, that'll be impossible, unless he wishes to hand one over to be raised by us, stated the main elder. That'll never happen. They are my children, and they will be raised by me and my wives, clarified Naruto. Then what do you propose? Asked another elder who seemed far more reasonable than the others. First, I want to clarify a few things. You wanted Hanabi's child, because you felt an Uzumaki, Hyuga hybrid could strengthen the clan, but you wanted them to be raised under your ways. Asked Naruto. Correct, answered the main elder. You couldn't do this with my son Boruto, as Hinata had already given up her rights to the Hyuga by becoming an Uzumaki, meaning our son was born an Uzumaki. Asked Naruto. Also correct, but at the time Hanabi was still a Hyuga, meaning her child could be born a Hyuga, confirmed the main elder. However, in doing so you also wanted brand Hanabi and take her child away from her. Asked Naruto. It was the only way to ensure the child was raised right, stated the main elder. That's where our issue comes in. We feel that there is a better way in raising the next Hyuga leader, than by taking them from the people who love them the most, said Naruto. Furthermore, I feel we need to change our approach to raising our leaders anyway. Our outdated and cruel practices were not what Hinata needed to grow strong. They may have worked for Hanabi, but had I been more caring and compassionate to Hinata, she would have progressed much faster. We fear the same fate would have befallen Hanabi's child had we let you take them from their parents, interjected Hiashi. You call our practices outdated and cruel, and yet your son-in-law is practicing something done by tyrannical dictators, stated the main elder. That might be true, but I'm doing it out of love, not because I can, interjected Naruto. Regardless, you still haven't told us how we is supposed to find our next heir, stated the main elder, wanting to get this conversation back on track. I don't think the heir should be chosen, suggested Naruto. What are you talking about? Asked the main elder. I'm guessing you'll always want the heir to be a descendant of the main house. Asked Naruto. Yes, but in this case, we'd be willing to accept the most appropriate member of the branch family, now that the main family line is dead, answered the main elder. Maybe it doesn't have to die, suggested Naruto. What do you mean? Asked the reasonable elder. The only reason the main line has died is because of the choices Hanabi and Hinata made. They decided there were things they wanted more than being their clan leader, said Naruto, taking both their hands. Choices they shouldn't have been allowed to make, as it was the responsibility of at least one of them to become clan leader, argued the main elder. Don't you think that maybe it was the lack of choice that made them decide to leave? Asked Naruto. The Hyuga elders were speechless by this response. For the longest time people told me I would amount to nothing, but I made the choice to prove them wrong and become the ninja I am today. You also thought Hinata was destined to be a failure, but she managed to prove you wrong. We're living proof that the only people who decide our destinies are us, and we accomplished that through the choices we made, stated Naruto. If I may interject again, for the longest time the Hyuga hasn't allowed its members to choose their own path. We force them to have a predetermined destiny at birth, which has only created turmoil over time. Both Neji and Hinata broke that cycle, and now Hanabi has as well, stated Hiashi. My point is, it shouldn't be solely up to you or Lord Hiashi who becomes the next heir to the Hyuga clan. It should also be up to the individual if they want to be clan heir. Both you and Lord Hiashi can have your preferences as to who you want to be clan leader, but in the end, it should be up to the individual if they want to be clan heir, stated Naruto. I don't want to force any of my kids to follow a path they don't want to follow. Both Hinata and Hanabi nodded at this statement. But I can understand and respect your desire to want to have your next leader be a descendant of the main branch. So, this is what I propose. Please wait a few more years until my children are older. As you know, Hinata and my son Boruto has my eyes, which lowers the chance of him having the Byakugan. The same could be true for my child with Hanabi. However, Lord Hiashi has confirmed there is still a chance they could inherit the Byakugan regardless of how their eyes look. Should they awaken the Byakugan, we're happy for them to be considered as the next Hyuga heir, but only when they are old enough to make the decision on their own and only if it is what they want, stated Naruto. I know that might not sound ideal to you, but this way not only do you potentially get a stronger leader, but you'll also have a descendant of the main branch. And like I said, it'll ensure this is a path your future leader wanted to take. As I said, I feel this is the best decision to satisfy everyone, interjected Lord Hiashi. The elders looked at each other. May we have a moment to think about this? Asked the main elder. Of course, take as long as you need, said Hiashi. They bowed their heads, and the elders left to discuss their options. Everyone else stayed in the room until the elders returned. Hiashi ordered some tea for them and everyone sat in silence as they waited for the elders to return. After half an hour, a door opened, the elders returned and retook their seats. Well, asked Hiashi. We've thought about your proposal and we agree this is the best option we can have, stated the main elder, who then turned to Naruto. But I hope you understand there will be rules your kids will have to follow should one of them agree. Like what? Asked Naruto. For starters, they will be required to give up the Uzumaki name and take the Hyuga name, answered the elder. Couldn't they simply hyphen it? Interjected Hinata. Unfortunately no. In order to be the head of the Hyuga clan, the only surname they can have is Hyuga, clarified the main elder. I understand, but I'm okay with that. Whatever decision my kids make I'll support, stated Naruto before turning to his wives. But only with the support of their mothers. Hinata and Hanabi looked at each other, they then turned back to the elders and nodded showing they agreed with this condition. Very well, but that's not the only condition they'll have to follow. They'll also have to leave home and come live here, so they can be trained in not only the techniques of the Hyuga clan, but also in our traditions and ways, said the main elder. I had a feeling this would be a condition. That being said, even if one of my children decides they want to be the leader of the Hyuga clan, I don't want them to be named heir until they're 18, because no matter what I won't be missing out of their childhoods, stated Naruto. The main elder looked at the others and they all nodded in agreement. Very well, but I want them to know they have this option as soon as both become genin, stated the main elder. Make it till they're chunin. I think they should be able to grow as ninja first before they have to make a decision, countered Naruto. The main elder looked back at the other elders who again nodded. Very well, we won't ask them to make a decision until both your children are chunin, and they won't officially become heir until they are 18, stated the main elder. But our other conditions stay. They must take the name Hyuga and live at the compound after they are named heir. Naruto turned to Hinata and Hanabi, both nodded showing they also agreed with the proposed conditions. Before I agree to this I have one more question to ask, stated Naruto turning back to the elders. Will my wives and I still be allowed to see the child who decides to become heir? The main elder sighed. We initially felt you should cut all ties if one of your children decided to be heir, but then we remembered what Lord Hiashi said about his daughters. That no matter what name they have they will always be his children and a part of their lives. I'm guessing it's safe to assume you'll feel the same way about your children. Naruto nodded. Then yes, you'll still be allowed to see your children, even if they decide to become heir to the Hyuga clan, stated the main elder. Then I'd agree to your conditions, stated Naruto. It's settled then, said the main elder. For now, we won't make any demands for an heir to be named. Should your children inherit the Byakugan, they will become potential candidates for clan heir. When they become chunin, they will be informed they can take this path. Should one of them decide to become clan heir, on their 18th birthday they will be officially named heir. But should both your children decline the option of being clan heir, then it is Lord Hiashi's responsibility to name a new heir as soon as possible. This is a responsibility I accept, stated Lord Hiashi. Very good. Now, I think we can all agree this meeting is over, said the main elder as he and the other elders stood. We look forward to seeing what your children decide in the future. Without another word spoken, the Hyuga elders left. Well, I'm glad that's over, sighed Naruto. I hate having to be that formal. You did look very uncomfortable the whole time, laughed Hinata. I'm just glad we reached an agreement that everyone was satisfied with, sighed Hiashi. Now what do we do? Asked Hanabi. If you ask me, we should go celebrate, stated Naruto. Anyone up for ramen? Sounds good, I'm starting, said Hanabi. Are you sure you're not just having pregnancy cravings? Asked Naruto, remembering what Hinata was like. I don't care. I'm hungry and I want to eat, said Hanabi, getting impatient. Alright everyone, calm down. I think a good meal is what we all need after this drama, laughed Hinata. Would you like to join us, father? Maybe another time. I still have a lot to do, but I think you should all just enjoy yourselves, stated Hiashi. It's been a rough few weeks, let's just be thankful it's over. Well, the Hyuga clan might have backed down, but I don't think we can say the same for the rest of the village, stated Naruto, remembering the stares they got from other villagers after they had left home. Hanabi took his hand. Don't forget, Naruto, we agreed that as long as we have each other everything will be okay. I know, I just feel guilty that I'm putting you both through this, stated Naruto, hugging her. Hinata then came over and joined the hug. You don't have to, Naruto, we want to be with you and nothing is going to change that, said Hinata. Hiashi smiled. Although he didn't fully agree with the situation, he was just happy Naruto made his daughters happy. Life went on for the Uzumaki family. People still stated and whispered amongst themselves whenever they were seen in public. Hinata feared that some wanted to attack Hanabi. Thankfully none of them did, as they knew the repercussions from Naruto would be much worse. Furthermore, now that they knew the rumors of Naruto using the fox to make them his slaves were false, people started to believe the rumors of Hanabi's pregnancy were false. However, as the months passed and Hanabi's stomach grew, it became clear those rumors were true. Some theorized Hanabi had just agreed to be a surrogate for Naruto and Hinata, especially considering both would regularly place a hand on Hanabi's growing stomach. This was quickly proven false as they were often overheard referring to the child as Hanabi's. This destroyed any denial the villagers had about Naruto and his relationship with the sisters. This angered the majority of the village. While it was true that Naruto was the hero of the last war, how did that give him the right to take a second wife? It was not only extremely old-fashioned, but many found it disgusting and forbidden, which they felt painted their village in a bad light. What made matters worse was that Naruto was expected to be the next Hokage. How would it make the Leaf Village look if their leader was in a disgusting polygamous relationship? This was a question that eventually made its way to the village leaders and elders. One morning, Naruto was sleeping peacefully with his wives on either side of him, when they heard a knock on the door. All three of them awoke confused. They had nothing planned for the day and were aiming to sleep in. Who do you think that is? Asked Hinata groggily. I'll go check, yawned Naruto. Hinata got out of bed to make it easier for him to get out. Okay, I'll make us some breakfast, yawned Hinata. I'll give you a hand, said Hanabi, struggling to sit up. Hinata walked over and put a hand on her shoulder. You're not doing anything. We'll say it as many times as we have to, until the baby comes, we're going to pamper you. We'll if you insist, laughed Hanabi. Naruto smiled at his wives before heading to the door. Naruto opened the door and was surprised to see Kakashi standing there. Sensei, is something wrong? Asked Naruto. Unfortunately, there is, sighed Kakashi. The other village leaders have called for an emergency meeting, and they are requesting for you to be there, stated Kakashi. Naruto looked towards the kitchen where he could see Hinata preparing breakfast and Hanabi sat at the table. Is this about? I'm afraid it is, Naruto. We thought the worst of this was over, but the worst is yet to come, interjected Kakashi. Okay, well, I'll tell them we've been summoned and we'll get ready as quickly as possible. Despite the mask hiding most of his face, Naruto saw Kakashi's expression go sad. As much as I'd like you all to be there, so you could support each other, the village leaders have stated that only you are to come, Kakashi clarified. I'm sorry Naruto, but your wives are going to have to stay home. But this concerns them as well, argued Naruto. I agree. Unfortunately, the concern of the village leaders is on the future of the Leaf Village, which they feel concerns you more than them, countered Kakashi. Alright, conceded Naruto. Can I at least say goodbye to them? Of course, just don't be long, we don't want to keep them waiting, stated Kakashi. Naruto nodded before heading back inside. He told Hinata and Hanabi what was happening and how he had to go with Kakashi to meet with the village leaders. Unsurprisingly, they wanted to go with him, but agreed to stay after hearing that only Naruto's presence was requested. Naruto got dressed, gave each wife a hug and kiss goodbye before heading off with Kakashi. As Naruto and Kakashi headed off into the distance, Hinata and Hanabi watched from the doorway, worried about what was about to happen. Hanabi was particularly worried. You don't think I've ruined Naruto's life and his dreams, do you? Asked Hanabi as she placed her hand on her stomach and started to cry. Don't worry about that, Hanabi. As long as the three of us are together, we'll be fine, stated Hinata comfortingly as she hugged her younger sister. I just hope Naruto feels the same way, thought Hinata. As Naruto followed Kakashi to the Hokage office, he had a strong feeling that he was about to receive the worst news of his life. He just hoped that no matter what he was about to hear, the comfort of his new family would get him through it. As they entered the meeting room, Naruto was greeted by the other leaders of the Leaf Village, most of them looking very stern and angry. Both Naruto and Kakashi took a seat at the table. Naruto, I'm sure you're aware why we called you in here today. Asked one of the leaders. I'm guessing it relates to my relationship with my wives, said Naruto. Correct. As you know, much of the village doesn't approve of you being with not only your wife but her sister as well, said the same leader. With all due respect, I view Hanabi as my wife as well, and I wish for you to refer to her as such, requested Naruto. It doesn't matter what you view her as, you are only legally married to Hinata, meaning none of us are obligated to refer to Hanabi as your wife, said another leader. I disagree, interjected Kakashi. Naruto showed us respect by coming today without argument. Because of this, I believe we show him the same respect by referring to both his partners as wives while he is in our presence. As you wish, Lord Sixth, said the first leader that spoke. Good. Now I think we should stop stalling and start discussing the real reason why we're here, requested Kakashi. The leaders nodded in agreement. Very well, said the first leader. Naruto, we acknowledge that life hasn't been easy for you. You were treated unfairly due to being the Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed fox. Nevertheless, you worked hard for the Leaf Village, and not only did you become a powerful ninja, but you became one that we are forever indebted to. Not just for your services to the village, but for your services to the entire world. Without you, none of us would be standing here today. That being said, just because we are forever indebted to you doesn't mean you are free to do whatever you want. Everyone has to face consequences for their actions, even war heroes. Taking on a second wife may have been acceptable in the past, especially given your accomplishments and the fact that you are the son of the fourth Hokage, said a different leader. However, it is now seen as an outdated practice that is only performed by tyrants who rule through fear and power. Because of this, most of us have decided that you taking on a second wife paints our village in a bad light. Especially considering you are expected to become the next Hokage. We feel it will lead outsiders to view us as a dictatorship, if our leader, who is also the strongest ninja in the world, has a harem. Because of this, we are giving you the following ultimatum. If you wish to continue your current path, you must end the relationship with one of your wives, said another leader. It doesn't matter which wife you choose, but if you still wish to become Hokage, we request that you only have one wife. Naruto's anger was growing, but he remained calm. And if I refuse? He asked. If you refuse, you will never be the Hokage, said the first leader. Naruto was shocked. They were forcing him to make an impossible choice. Either he give up on the dream he had worked his entire life for, or he end the relationship with one of the women he loved. We'll give you some time to think it over, but we expect your answer by the end of the week, said the same leader. Meeting adjourned. Naruto got up and left without saying anything else. He proceeded to wander around the village considering his options. The choice seemed impossible. How could he choose between his lifelong dream and the women he loved? Before Naruto knew it, he had wandered home. Naruto decided to be honest with his wives about what was going on. After entering, Hinata and Hanabi came to greet him. Naruto, is everything okay? Asked Hinata. No. Listen guys, we need to talk, said Naruto. They soon gathered in the living room where Naruto told them about the ultimatum he had been given by the village leaders. Unsurprisingly, the sisters were shocked, particularly Hanabi, whose worst fears had been confirmed. So you mean? Asked Hanabi. Yes, I have to leave one of you or I'll never be allowed to become Hokage, Naruto confirmed. How can they do that? After everything you did in the war, denying you your dream doesn't seem fair, stated Hinata. They feel me being both Hokage and in a polygamous marriage will give of the impression that we're an old-fashioned and tyrannical village, answered Naruto. But you didn't force us into this. We're the ones who chose to love you, stated Hinata. If anything, we forced you into this after I invited Hanabi to join our relationship. Unfortunately, they don't see it that way, said Naruto. Something tells me they want their next Hokage to be more modern and not someone who is in a polygamous relationship. They view it as a practice only performed by Tyants. Still, it feels wrong for them to punish you just because you have enough love in your heart to love two people, said Hinata. I agree, but I don't think there's anything I can do about it. I have a feeling they've made their decision and I can't force them to let me be Hokage, because then I will look like a tyrant, stated Naruto. Also, if I did that, I fear I'd no longer be the man you both fell in love with. Hinata took Naruto's hand. Naruto, no matter what you do, we'll always love you. Right, Hana? She trailed off when they saw tears streaming from Hanabi's eyes. Hanabi, what's wrong? Asked Naruto. This is all my fault, answered Hanabi. Hey, no, it's not, said Hinata. Yes, it is, yelled Hanabi. They were silent after this. Hinata was just glad Hanabi hadn't woken Boruto, who was currently napping. After taking a few deep breaths to calm down, Hanabi continued. I should have known this would happen. I should have known that if our relationship ever became public, it would ruin Naruto's life. Now, because of me, Naruto will never become Hokage. I only confessed because I didn't want to hurt you or Hinata, but now I've ruined everything. I should have kept my feelings to myself. Naruto got her to look at him. He wiped some of her tears before saying, What did I tell you before? This isn't your fault. Yes, you feel in love with me first, but after you joined our relationship, I soon fell in love with you as well. You can't blame yourself for this, when in the end it was I who decided to love two women. And you were very brave for coming forward and telling me the truth. This would have ruined the relationship between most sisters, but you told me anyway because you wanted to be honest, and I'm eternally grateful for that. I want my little sister to be happy, so I saw nothing wrong with sharing the man I love with her, stated Hinata. You even expressed that you feared I would hate you for this, but remember what I said the night you first joined us, I could never hate you. That's why I consider you the super sister, laughed Hanabi, wiping more tears from her eyes. Super sister. That has a nice ring to it, laughed Hinata. Their laughter was short-lived as Hanabi still felt guilt over the whole situation. But Naruto, how can you still love me now that I've destroyed your chances of becoming Hokage? Asked Hanabi. Naruto pulled her into a hug. We all have dreams and they are all equally important. When the news first came that this was hurting my chances of becoming Hokage, I asked you what your dream was. Do you remember what you said? Asked Naruto. For us to be one big happy family, answered Hanabi. That's right, and that dream is just as important as my own. And remember, I also said that's my dream now as well. You, me, Hinata, Boruto, and our unborn child will all be one big happy family, declared Naruto. It was at this point that Naruto knew what he had to do. Better yet, he knew what he wanted to do. He let go of Hanabi and stood up. Stay here, I'll be back, said Naruto, heading for the door. Where are you going? Asked Hinata. They said I had a week to give them my decision, but I'm going to let them know I've already made my choice, answered Naruto. What are you going to tell them? Asked Hanabi. I think you already know, said Naruto, looking back and grinning. You're really going to give up being Hokage for us? Asked Hinata. I never said I had given up. This isn't the first time I was told I'd never be Hokage. I proved them wrong once, who's to say I can't do it again, answered Naruto, giving them a toothy grin and a thumbs up. Besides, it's just a position, there are people now that are more important to me. Both Hinata and Hanabi were touched by how much Naruto loved them, and they admired that he wasn't deterred by this. It could take many more years for him to become Hokage, so they admired that he was still determined to live his dream no matter what. Besides, this will give me more time with you and the kids, laughed Naruto before taking off to the Hokage office. Naruto wasted no time heading to Kakashi's office and walking through the door without knocking. Kakashi looked up from his paperwork, a little annoyed by Naruto's intrusion. Naruto, I know we go way back, but I'd prefer you at least knock before barging in, sighed Kakashi. I'm sorry, but this is important, said Naruto. Gather the leaders, I've made my decision. Unfortunately, I can't do that, Naruto. They have their own duties to fulfill and they won't be available until the end of the week, stated Kakashi. Why do you think they gave you the deadline? Naruto was annoyed but said, you know what, that's fine, I don't want to see them again anyway. Just let them know, I've made my choice and I'm staying with both my wives. Kakashi looked at Naruto seriously. Are you sure about this, Naruto? Remember, they said you will never be allowed to become Hokage if you decide to have two wives. We both know that's not the first time I've been told that, argued Naruto. I've proved them wrong before. Kakashi had a feeling he knew where this was going. And you want to prove them wrong again? Naruto nodded. You do realize, it could take years to change their minds, stated Kakashi. I don't care, I now have something more important to me than being Hokage, stated Naruto. A family. Despite a mask covering Kakashi's face, Naruto could tell that he was smiling. Very well, I'll let them know as soon as possible, stated Kakashi. And between the two of us, I think you made the right choice. Thanks, said Naruto. But before I go, I have another question. After the war, you said you wished to promote me to Jonin, but said I had to undertake leadership training first. Is there any chance we could speed that up, because we could use the extra money from the promotion? Kakashi laughed. Lucky for you, I looked into this after I received the news that you'd hurt your chances of becoming Hokage. Normally, you'd have to be promoted to Chunin before being allowed to become a Jonin. You mean I'll have to take the Chunin exams again, groaned Naruto. You didn't let me finish, stated Kakashi. Normally, you'd have to be promoted to Chunin first, but everyone including the other village leaders agree that it would be pointless for you to take the exams again, because your skill would far exceed that of the other applicants. Therefore, we've decided we can promote you without you retaking the exams. I also think you've done more than enough leadership training to warrant further promoting you to Jonin. So, you mean? Asked Naruto. Yes, because you currently can't become Hokage, I'm going to speed up your promotion to Jonin, Kakashi confirmed. Thank you, Kakashi-sensei, said Naruto. Don't worry about it. I too think the other villagers are being unfair about this, so I have no issue promoting you to a position no one can argue you don't deserve, stated Kakashi. Now look, I'd love to continue chatting, but I have a lot of work to do. Of course, see you later, sensei, said Naruto, who then left. Naruto ran back to his home to tell his wives the good news. Well, asked Hinata as Naruto came through the door. I told Kakashi-sensei that I wasn't leaving either of you. He's agreed to pass my decision on to the other leaders, answered Naruto. Was he upset about your decision? Asked Hanabi. He reminded me of the consequences, but he also feels I made the right choice. He even felt putting my family first was the right choice, stated Naruto. But I've also got some good news. They gave Naruto their full attention. He's agreed to speed up my promotion to Jonin. And let's face it, that's a position I definitely deserve. Knowing this was big news, they both jumped forward and hugged him. Naruto, that's wonderful, cried Hinata. Yeah, we should do something to celebrate, said Hanabi. I'm glad you think so, because I know exactly what we should do, said Naruto, grabbing her intimately. Naruto, I don't think we should do that. We stopped having when Hinata was pregnant, argued Hanabi, although she couldn't deny she also liked the sound of Naruto's plan. Yes, but I was a bit further along when we made that decision, said Hinata. Besides, after we went for your last checkup, I asked Sakura if it was safe for us to do so, said Naruto. She slapped me, but also said that would be fine. Well, if the doctors say it's okay, said Hanabi, holding Naruto in the same way. Care to join us, Hinata? Asked Naruto. Always, but I think I'll sit this one out. I think Hanabi needs to be reminded she hasn't ruined anything, said Hinata. Don't be silly, Hinata. We're all in this relationship and we're all partly to blame for our situation, said Hanabi, extending a hand to her. So, I think all of us should be allowed to celebrate tonight. Well, when you put it that way, conceded Hinata, taking Hanabi's hand. The three of them headed to their bedroom and shut the door behind them. While life was happy for the Uzumaki family, the prejudice of the village still remained. Even though both Naruto and Hinata saw Hanabi as Naruto's second wife, many still refused to acknowledge her as such. Whenever the three of them walked around the village together, many people stared at them with disgust, and they overheard whispers of them calling Hanabi Naruto's mistress, or his, personal. They didn't mind, however, because they loved each other, and no matter what people said, they considered Hanabi Naruto's wife and there was nothing they could do about it. The villagers knew this, but they didn't like it, as they still believed it painted their village in a bad light. The prejudice only got worse as the months passed and Hanabi's stomach grew. This created more whispers, with many calling her child a disgusting bastard. Hanabi was just glad she usually went out with either Hinata or Naruto, because she didn't know if she would have been able to control herself without them. On the rare occasion that Hanabi did go out on her own, she did her best to ignore the judgment of the villagers, because she had her baby to think about and she didn't want to do anything that would cause them harm. The villagers also knew better than to harm Naruto's wives, because as the hero of the previous war and the strongest ninja in the Leaf Village, they knew doing something to provoke him would be unwise. Because of this, the villagers generally kept their distance and weren't open with their judgment, because they knew this was the best way to ensure their safety. 9 months passed and eventually Hanabi found herself in the hospital holding a beautiful baby girl in her arms. She had her mother's brown hair and white eyes, but had many features of Naruto, most noticeably a few of his trademark whiskers. Many people had come and gone to see the baby, but Naruto and Hinata hadn't left Hanabi's side since she gave birth. This baby was the newest member of their family, and they weren't going to leave Hanabi's side until she was ready to come home. And even though this baby was technically Hinata's stepdaughter, niece, Hinata had promised to love the girl as if she was her own. Hanabi had agreed to do the same for Hinata's son Boruto. Eventually the trio were greeted by one final visitor, as Hiyashi entered the room. Father? Asked Hanabi, surprised. Hello, Hanabi, are you doing well? Asked Hiyashi. Still a little tired, but I'm powering through, answered Hanabi. I'm sorry I haven't been around much lately, stated Hiyashi. It's okay, We understand that the elders have been putting more pressure on you to commit to your clan duties, said Hanabi. Hiyashi's eyes focused on the child in Hanabi's arms. Is that your child? Asked Hiyashi. Yes. Father, meet your granddaughter. Nitsuko, announced Hanabi. Nitsuko Uzumaki, questioned Hiyashi. Yes, father, I hope that's okay, stated Hanabi. It is your right to give her whatever name you please, and honestly, I should not have expected anything else, admitted Hiyashi. Would you like to hold her? Offered Hanabi. You trust me to hold her? Asked Hiyashi. Of course I do. After everything you did to help us with the elders, I don't believe you'll try to run off with my child, stated Hanabi. That is correct. And despite the issues the three of you have caused for the Hyuga clan, I still wish to be a part of your lives, and nothing would make me happier than to be a part of my grandchildren's lives, admitted Hiyashi. And believe me, father, that would also make us happy, interjected Hinata. Now, would you like to hold her? Offered Hanabi again. I would love to, answered Hiyashi. Hanabi placed the girl in her father's arms, and even the usually strict Hiyashi couldn't help but smile upon holding his granddaughter for the first time. He'd had the same smile on his face when he first held Boruto. Despite the anger he had presented upon initially hearing the news of Hanabi's pregnancy, they had a feeling that Hiyashi would be a loving grandfather to his grandchildren and would greatly soften as the years went on. IFE was as good as it could be for the Uzumaki family. Hanabi was overjoyed now that she was a mother. She took Nitsuko everywhere with her, not only because she was the most beautiful thing Hanabi had ever seen, but also because her laugh was the most adorable thing ever. For a newborn, Nitsuko laughed a lot. It wasn't all easy, however. There were still issues with the baby staying up at night and keeping them awake, but usurpingly, 3 parents could handle this better than 2. When Hanabi looked like she needed a break, Hinata would often get up to calm Nitsuko down when she was fussing. Hanabi had done the same for Boruto when he was a newborn. With additional help from Naruto, it made the pressure of a newborn a lot easier. From here they came up with a system for childcare that worked for everyone, because if someone had to go away on a mission, the others were happy to look after the children. Hanabi was still on maternity leave, so responsibility would regularly fall on her to look after the children if Naruto and/or Hinata were called away for missions. She didn't mind, however, because Hanabi loved her daughter and nephew more than anything in the world. Naruto and Hinata would also return the favor by giving her a rest when they got back, and both had promised to look after Nitsuko once Hanabi returned to missions. Although the sisters were happy to help each other with tasks like this, there would be tasks in the future they would need to carry out either on their own or with Naruto. While both children were Naruto's, it was agreed that future punishments for either child would be handled by their parents. Meaning Hinata would handle punishments for Boruto and Hanabi would handle punishments for Nitsuko, but Naruto was to support both mothers and was allowed to punish either child. They knew this would be difficult, however, because Hinata loved Nitsuko as if she was her own, and Hanabi felt the same about Boruto. Thankfully, they knew it would be a few years before they had to worry about that. Even Boruto was happy to be a big brother. Or rather a half-brother cousin. The parents were a little worried about how he would react to there being another child in the house, but he already seemed to love Nitsuko like they did. Whenever the two were close together, Boruto would reach out a hand to Nitsuko, which she would take, and both would smile and laugh. This made the parents even happier, as it was clear the children were already close friends. There was no denying that despite the oddity of their relationship, they were a big happy family. There was even a family photo in their house to prove it. Naruto stood in the middle with a big grin on his face, as Hinata and Hanabi both kissed him on the cheek. Each child was being held by their respective mother. They had joined hands with each other and had smiles as big as their father. They also hadn't let the stress of having children interrupt their bedroom life. Unfortunately, while life was happy at home, the same couldn't be said for the outside world. Ever since Nitsuko's birth, the stares they received and the whispers they overheard only increased. It didn't sit well with the village that all three of them were together and they had no intention of splitting up. Some were even starting to view Naruto as a disgrace, because he'd thrown away his chance to be Hokage, all because he decided to love two women. This felt like a punch in the gut to Naruto at times. After everything he had done for both the village and the entire world, many of them hated him again, all because of one decision he made. The family did their best to ignore them, however, because the three of them were happy together and that was all that mattered. Hanabi was the one to face the worst backlash. As she wasn't legally married to Naruto like Hinata, most of the village refused to acknowledge her as a legitimate wife. This prejudice extended to her daughter. Hanabi was out one day with Nitsuko in a stroller, as Hinata had asked her to run a few errands. It was well known by this point that Hanabi was the third wheel in the relationship, so she was quickly recognized whenever she left the house. Thankfully, she was able to ignore the stares and whispers because spending time with her daughter took away all her cares. She quickly arrived at the shop and started finding the items Hinata had requested. During this time, she regularly saw people staring at her from the end of an aisle, but they would leave as soon as she turned to look at them. Hanabi wasn't worried, however, because she knew as Naruto's wife, she was safe. No one dared harm her out of fear of retaliation from Naruto. Even if someone was foolish enough to attack Hanabi or Nitsuko, Hanabi would personally make sure they lived to regret it. Hanabi soon finished and made her way to the checkout. The cashier didn't say anything to Hanabi as the items were priced, she only spoke when telling Hanabi the total. Hanabi gave her the money which the cashier made change for. "Thank you," said Hanabi politely, extending her arm for the change. The cashier, however, ignored Hanabi and put the change on the counter. Hanabi thought this was rude but went to take the change without saying anything. "Now get out of here and take that filthy bastard with you," spat the cashier. Hanabi tensed up at hearing this. She'd overheard some horrid things said about her daughter, but this was the first time someone had said it to her face. Hanabi took a few deep breaths to calm down. More than anything, she wanted to put this cashier through a world of pain, but also didn't want to risk hurting her daughter. She said nothing, collected her change and headed for the door. Before she left, she said, "You wouldn't like me saying that about your child, so I kindly ask you not say that about mine, because if you say that to me again you'll regret it." Hanabi left before anything else could be said. As she walked home, Hanabi was shaking with anger. She was hoping that over time the village would accept the situation and leave them alone, but that didn't seem like it was going to happen anytime soon. Hanabi feared that no matter how much time passed, they would continue to view her as a mistress and her daughter as a bastard. Hanabi was pulled from her thoughts after Nitsuko started crying. She parked the stroller and went to comfort her daughter. This helped comfort Hanabi as well because it reminded her of what she loved the most and what was most important. On her way home, she found herself passing by Yamanaka flowers. She wondered if the sight of some beautiful flowers could help lift her spirits. Maybe Hinata would like some flowers for the kitchen, thought Hanabi, entering. The moment she stepped inside, the stares began again. Unfortunately, this was a much smaller shop, making it harder to ignore them. She overheard things like, "I don't know what's worse, that the S out in public or that she brought her bastard with her. Because of her, Naruto will never be able to take his rightful place as Hokage. Naruto gave up his chances of being Hokage just to have a second partner. What a disgrace." Thankfully, however, there were still moments where they were reminded they had people who supported them. "Hey, show some damn respect," shouted a woman. Everyone turned to see Ino, who had inherited the shop from her parents. Upon noticing the commotion, she decided to say something. "Naruto saved the entire world. Without him, none of us would be here. So what if he has two wives? That was his choice. Furthermore, it's none of our business what he does in his personal life," scolded Ino. Now quit staring or get the hell out of my shop. Everyone did as instructed and went back to browsing. You okay? Asked Ino approaching Hanabi. Yeah, thanks Ino, sighed Hanabi sadly. Don't worry about it, people need to mind their own business, stated Ino. And hopefully if they see others stand up for you, they'll learn to leave you alone. Ino then knelt to look at Nitsuko. Besides, how could anyone hate this little angle, said Ino caressing her cheek. She's such a beautiful little girl. You should hear her laugh, it's the cutest thing ever, said Hanabi happily. Well, maybe I'll get the chance to hear it on one of Inojin's playdates with Boruto, said Ino before standing up. Anyway, is there anything I can help you with? Did you want to get something special for your house? I did, but I think I'm just going to go home, said Hanabi. It's no problem, I'm happy to help, said Ino. Yeah, but I don't want to cause you to lose any business, said Hanabi, and she left before Ino could say another word. Before long she returned home. She put the groceries on the counter and then went to stare at the family photo of the 5 of them. They were so happy together, why couldn't the village just be happy for them? Oh, Hanabi, when did you get back? Asked Hinata walking into the room. Just now, sighed Hanabi, still staring at the picture. Did you get everything I asked for? Asked Hinata walking over to the counter. Yeah, answered Hanabi. Thank you, stated Hinata. Also, I just put Boruto down for a nap, so it might be a good idea to put Nitsuko down as well. Okay. Hinata started unpacking the bags. Listen, Naruto should be coming home from his mission tonight and I was hoping to cook him something special. Would you like to help? Sure, sighed Hanabi. Hanabi, is something wrong? Asked Hinata, noticing that her sister wasn't her usual cheerful self. Yeah, just the usual, answered Hanabi. What did they say this time? Asked Hinata. Just the usual things. Calling Nitsuko a bastard and accusing me of ruining Naruto's life, answered Hanabi sadly. Hinata went over and hugged her sister. I'm sorry Hanabi, I should have gone instead, or at least gone with you, said Hinata. Don't worry about it. I can't expect you and Naruto to do everything around here and they say bad things about you as well, stated Hanabi. Yes, but it's only things like, why are you still married to Naruto, and, how are you okay with this, said Hinata. The worst I've been called since this began is pathetic and a doormat, which let's face it is no worse than some of the things I was called as a child. I guess, but it makes me wonder if I deserve the backlash I get. I know this was something we all decided on and you keep telling me this isn't my fault, but I still feel guilty for causing you and Naruto problems, said Hanabi. Yes, but remember we also said that because this is something we all agreed to, we are all at fault for the public's reaction. So please don't feel guilty. We're all equals in this relationship, so any backlash we face is the fault of all of us, said Hinata. Hanabi stood up and picked up Nitsuko. Unfortunately, the public won't see it this way for one simple reason. You're married to Naruto and I'm not, said Hanabi sadly before taking Nitsuko to have a nap. Hinata felt guilty. More than anything, she and Naruto had wanted Hanabi to feel equal to them in this relationship, but she also knew Hanabi was right. How could Hanabi feel equal to them when she wasn't married to Naruto like Hinata was? A few hours later Naruto came home. Hinata. Hanabi, I'm home, he called entering. Good evening Naruto, how was the mission? Asked Hinata. Pretty boring, said Naruto. I'm mostly being asked to provide security for wealthy clients. Not as much work now, due to the conflict ending between nations. Still, they pay a lot of money to have me as security, which is why Sensei is always assigning them to me. Hinata hugged Naruto. You're working hard to support our family and that's all that matters to me. Speaking of family, where's Hanabi? Asked Naruto. Hinata's expression went sad. Naruto, we need to talk, said Hinata, leading him to the living room. They entered to see Hanabi sitting on the couch watching the children play. She looked so sad. Hanabi, I think you should tell Naruto what happened today, Hinata advised. Hanabi told Naruto everything. The incidents at both the supermarket and flower shop and how she expressed why the village will never view her as an equal in their relationship. Naruto held Hanabi close. I'm sorry, Hanabi. I wish I could do more to help you, said Naruto. I know, but what can you do? Asked Hanabi. You can't retaliate against them, that'll only make our situation worse. Still, I wish I could do something to ensure people didn't stare at us like freaks every time we went out in public, said Naruto, remembering instances from his own childhood where he was called a freak in public. Unfortunately, we can't change the public's opinion, said Hinata sadly. Well, what if we moved away? Asked Naruto. Hinata and Hanabi looked at Naruto confused. What do you mean? Asked Hinata. As you said, we can't change the public's opinion. What if we moved somewhere where we were accepted for who we are? Asked Naruto. I guess that could work, said Hanabi. But where would we go? Also, you'll never be able to become Hokage if you move away, said Hinata. I know, but I've been thinking about it, and although being Hokage will always be my dream, I've decided there are things more important to me now. Making sure both you and our children are happy, and I'm not sure I can do that if we stay in the Leaf Village, said Naruto. Also, I think the village has made their choice. They don't want someone in a polygamous marriage to be Hokage. Maybe I should just accept it isn't an option for me anymore. I can live with knowing that I was at least strong enough to be Hokage. But Naruto, it was your dream, stated Hinata. Like I said, there are more important things to me than dreams, said Naruto. Hinata smiled at this. She had initially fallen in love with Naruto due to his determination and desire to follow his dreams no matter what. One could argue this was Naruto giving up on his dream, but Hinata knew this wasn't the case. It wasn't that he had given up, he had just realized there was now something more important to him, and that was to be there for the women he loved. She had a feeling he would apply the same dedication to them, as he had to being Hokage, meaning Naruto hadn't given up on his dream had simply changed. That means everything to me, Naruto, said Hinata, wiping away a tear. Me too, said Hanabi, perking up. Besides, Lady Tsunade wasn't living in the Leaf Village when they decided to make her Hokage. I'm sure there will come a day when the village realizes they need you to lead them, and they'll be begging you to become Hokage. So, what do you think? Should we move? Asked Naruto. Again, where would we go? Asked Hanabi. Honestly, I don't know, said Naruto. After the war, I probably would have been welcome to join any of the hidden villages, but now I'm not so sure. I agree, why would another village would treat us kindly if the Leaf doesn't? Asked Hinata. I guess we could just move somewhere else, suggested Hanabi. Maybe we could set up a small security business where we offer our services as ninja. I still think we'd face the same problem. I feel no matter where we go, we'll still be treated poorly because of our relationship, sighed Naruto. I don't know why I brought this up, I already said the same thing to Gaara. What do you mean? Asked Hinata. I don't know if you remember, but shortly after Natsuko was born I went on a mission to the Sand Village. While I was there, I caught up with Gaara. He'd heard about how I was no longer allowed to become Hokage because of how the village felt about our relationship. He'd also heard about how we've been treated since our relationship became public, said Naruto. Gaara then told me if living in the lead village became too hard, we'd always be welcome to come and live in the Sand Village. He even thinks the village might be more accepting of us considering the Sand Village has a fairly tyrannical history. Considering this is the first time you're bringing this up, I'm guessing you didn't agree? Asked Hanabi. I could see where he was coming from, but I don't know if we can be certain they would be accepting, said Naruto. Sure, they've probably had rulers who have done stuff more controversial than being in a polygamous marriage, but I also think they're trying to move past that part of their history, and I feel us living there would only remind them of the village's tyrannical past. I can see what you mean. Even if they were more accepting, they probably wouldn't like what we represent, said Hinata. So, I turned Gaara down because I didn't want to cause him any trouble, said Naruto. Sorry I didn't bring this up sooner. It's okay, we've all had a lot on our minds, sighed Hinata. I guess there really isn't anywhere we could go that would accept us for who we are. I can't think of any other better options. Maybe staying in the Leaf Village is our best option, stated Hanabi. Naruto and Hinata looked at her in shock. Considering Hanabi faced the worst backlash from their relationship, they thought she'd be the one most eager to move away. Think about it, she said. Sure, we could move to another village that would be more accepting of us, but I think they'd still stay clear of us, and we'd be living a life of isolation. I know we'd all be together and that's what's most important, but think about what we'd be leaving behind. Yes, most of the village now looks at us with disgust, but if today has taught me anything, it's that there are still people who love and support us. Ino stood up for me today and I know our other friends will stand up for us as well. Even Lord Sixth, who has to remain impartial, has done everything he can to support us. If we moved away we'd live a peaceful life, but it would be a lonely one. While we stay here, we still have friends who will support us no matter what, and our children will hopefully become friends with their children. I don't know about the two of you, but I don't think we should leave that behind. Both Hinata and Naruto thought on this for a bit until Hinata spoke. I agree, staying here ensures we have others who love and support us, and our children deserve the chance to have a normal childhood. Also, you've seen the way father acts around the kids. If we moved away, it would break his heart, laughed Hinata. Yeah, being a grandfather has brought out a side of him I never thought we'd see, laughed Hanabi. So, is that what you both want? To stay in the Leaf Village? Asked Naruto. Yes, because even though we'd probably find more peace living away from the village, I think it's important we stay close to the people who support us, answered Hinata. Hanabi nodded in agreement. Naruto walked forward and hugged them both. Well, if both my wives want to stay, then I guess we're staying, laughed Naruto. Hanabi held Naruto tighter upon hearing this. She loved it when Naruto called her his wife. Even though it wasn't legally true. Naruto, could you call me that again? Asked Hanabi. What? My wife? Asked Naruto. Yes, I'm your wife, said Hanabi, tearing up. Naruto held her tighter upon hearing this and Hinata went to comfort her as well. They had a feeling Hanabi was thinking about how most of the villagers refused to acknowledge her as Naruto's wife. They all felt this was unfair, because while Hinata was the one legally married to Naruto, Hanabi was also his wife in all the ways that mattered. They just wish they could do something to change this. Later that night, Naruto lay awake between his wives contemplating the situation. He kept wishing there was a way he could legally marry Hanabi the same way he married Hinata. He had a feeling that Hanabi would always feel unequal to him and Hinata if he didn't, and he also felt the villagers would always use this as an excuse to say she wasn't his wife. Naruto looked over at Hanabi, who was sleeping to his left. Despite being the mother of his daughter and sharing his surname, most of the village would never acknowledge her as a legitimate wife, which felt completely unfair. Truth was, Naruto loved Hanabi as much as he loved Hinata, and if he could marry her as well he would. Sadly, Kakashi had informed him it wasn't legally possible. What's wrong, Naruto? Whispered Hinata, sitting up on Naruto's right. Nothing. I'm just thinking, whispered Naruto. About what? You can tell me, whispered Hinata, snuggling up to him. I just wish I could marry Hanabi as well so people would stop saying she isn't my wife. Asked Naruto. I wish you could too. It hurts me to see her saddened by this, admitted Hinata. I don't think it would change the public's opinion, but at least no one could say she isn't your wife. Well, hopefully Hanabi can live with the fact that if I could marry her, I would, sighed Naruto. I know you would, which is why we love you, stated Hinata. Naruto and Hinata then decided they needed to find a way to make Hanabi a true equal in their relationship, even if it affected them negatively. Naruto and Hinata were currently in the Konoha library researching everything they could regarding the Land of Fire's laws regarding polygamous marriages. Kakashi had also sent a shadow clone to help them, as he wanted to help them in any way he could. His position as Hokage also granted them access to restricted books. They were keeping this from Hanabi, as should they find a way to make her Naruto's wife, they wanted to surprise her. They used excuses like they were running errands or providing security for the village to explain their absence. Thankfully, Hanabi wasn't suspicious. Unfortunately, they'd been at it for over a week, and they still found nothing. They'd found a few laws that could have helped, but unfortunately, they were now void. I told you, Naruto, this isn't legally possible, sighed the Kakashi clone, closing a book. You say that, but we've come close a few times. Remember that old law we found where it said that in addition to high-ranking officials being allowed to take a second wife, their legacies could as well. As the son of the fourth Hokage, there was a time I could have taken a second wife, stated Naruto. Yes, but that law was made void shortly before Tsunade became the fifth Hokage. That being said though, as the son of the third, I think Asuma would have been allowed to take a second wife. Please don't tell Kurenai I said that, said the Kakashi clone. We promise we won't, said Hinata, who then looked at the law herself. Makes me wonder though if this law applies to my family, but I can't think of anywhere in our family history where the head of the Hyuga clan had more than one spouse. That's probably because it would have caused greater tension within the main family. There'd be greater arguments over who deserves to be heir, and something tells me some spouses wouldn't hesitate to kill each other or the children, said the Kakashi clone. Either way, I think it's a good start and maybe we'll find a modern law that applies to us, said Naruto. They continued researching for a few more hours before Hinata discovered something in a book detailing the most up-to-date laws regarding marriage in the Land of Fire. Guys, come over here, she called. Naruto and Kakashi's clone headed over. According to this, while legacies are no longer allowed to take additional spouses, people who hold or have held significant positions of power are still allowed to take on an additional spouse, stated Hinata. This includes the position of the Hokage. This law is still in effect. So, I could take on 2 wives if I wanted to. Interesting, thought the Kakashi clone. Oh, so you criticize me for taking on a second wife, but now you're considering it? Asked Naruto. I'm legally allowed to, and you said the reason you did this was because you didn't want to look a gift horse in the mouth. Also, as 6th Hokage, I'm sure I could easily find 2 women wanting to be my wife, said the Kakashi clone. You could have done that before you became Hokage, joked Naruto, remembering how certain women had acted around Kakashi. Unfortunately, this still doesn't help us. It clearly states you have to hold or have held a significant position of power, Kakashi's clone clarified. And since you are now forbidden from becoming Hokage, this isn't a law you'll be able to use. Hinata, is there any way we can use this law to our advantage? Asked Naruto. Hinata scanned the entire section. When she was finished, she looked at him and sadly shook her head. What about the Clan Restoration Act we found in another book? Asked Naruto. During the early days of their research, Naruto had found a law known as the Clan Restoration Act. It detailed that if there was only one surviving male member of a strong bloodline, they were permitted to take more than one wife. The only other Uzumaki that Naruto was aware of was a female named Karen. From what they could tell, aside from his son Boruto, Naruto was the only male Uzumaki left. He was hoping he'd be able to use this law to marry Hanabi as well, but they hadn't been able to find a recent mention of it to see if the law was still in effect. Hinata proceeded to scan both the contents and index of the book to see if there was any mention of the Clan Restoration Act. She found something as she then turned to another section of the book. She soon looked sad before handing the book to Naruto and Kakashi's clone. They scanned the page to see the book say that the Clan Restoration Act had since been discontinued. So that's it then. There's no way for me to marry Hanabi as well, sighed Naruto. Hinata shook her head in sadness. Kakashi's clone had another look through the book to see if Hinata had missed anything. However, he too eventually put the book down and sighed. I'm sorry, Naruto, truly I am. It's okay, it's not your fault. We chose to be honest about our relationship, but now I'm wondering if we should have kept quiet until I became Hokage. We probably could have passed of Hanabi's child as Hinata's in the meantime and only told the truth when the time was right, stated Naruto. I don't think that would have worked either, added Hinata. We would have had to keep both Hanabi and I hidden until she had the baby so no one would figured out the truth. I feel people would have connected the dots eventually. The only way we might have gotten away with it is if we said Hanabi had agreed to be a surrogate, but even then, I think people would be suspicious. Still, if we found a way to keep this secret until I became Hokage, I could have married Hanabi without issue and no one could say she isn't my wife, said Naruto. Starting to wonder if the village leaders knew about this and forbade me from becoming Hokage to ensure I couldn't take a second wife. Said Kakashi's clone, growing suspicious. Something wrong, sensei? Asked Naruto. No, it just occurred to me you could be right. The village leaders are probably far more familiar with the Land of Fire's laws than most. I wouldn't be surprised if they knew about this law and decided to forbid you from becoming Hokage to ensure you couldn't use it, said Kakashi's clone. They expressed that having our leader being in a polygamous marriage would make the village look bad, so I wouldn't be surprised if they were willing to take away the one thing that would allow you to marry Hanabi. The clone stood up. I'm going to look into this. It won't change anything, but it will reveal the true reasons why you've been forbidden from becoming Hokage. Thank you, sensei, said Naruto. The clone nodded before exploding in a puff of smoke and transferring its knowledge to the original Kakashi. Naruto slumped down in his chair and Hinata walked over to comfort him by wrapping her arms around his neck. I guess that's it then. There's nothing we can do that'll allow me to marry Hanabi as well, he sighed. If only I was Hokage, I could be happily married to both of you, and now that will never happen. I know, Naruto, and I'm sorry. We should have planned for this better, sighed Hinata. Still, even if you could legally marry Hanabi, something tells me the village still wouldn't acknowledge it as you married me first. Still, I just wish there was something I could do to make all of us equal, said Naruto. Hinata held Naruto tighter upon hearing this. There is something we can do, she said. There is. What? Asked Naruto. You're not going to like it. The very thought of it makes me want to cry, said Hinata, tearing up. Another week passed and Naruto and Hinata continued on their quest to make Hanabi an equal in their relationship, all the while keeping Hanabi in the dark to keep it a surprise. They kept using the excuse of running errands or security duty to explain their absence throughout the day. Hanabi didn't mind, however, as she was still on maternity leave and loved spending time with the children, especially now that the 1-year-old Boruto had started calling her Auntie. One day she had just finished putting the children down for an afternoon nap when she heard the door open. Hanabi were home, called Naruto. This surprised Hanabi as they weren't expected back till the end of the day. Nevertheless, she went over to greet them. After giving both of them a hug, Naruto and Hinata decided to get down to business. Hanabi, we've got something to tell you, said Naruto. It might be best if we sit down for this, insisted Hinata. After they sat down, Hinata pulled out some papers. What are those? Asked Hanabi. Well, get to them in a second, answered Hinata. Hanabi, as you know, we feel guilty that you aren't treated as an equal part of this relationship by the public, said Naruto. And I told you I don't mind, because I'm just happy I get to be with you, said Hanabi. You say that, but we can see it makes you sad when people call you Naruto's mistress or his, said Hinata. And so, we've been looking into ways that you can be seen as an equal in our relationship, said Naruto. That's actually what we've been up to these past few weeks. We wanted to surprise you, which is why we just told you we were out running errands, said Hinata. It took weeks, but we've found a solution, said Naruto. It's not the best solution, but it's the only one we have, said Hinata sadly. It was at this point Hinata put the papers on the table in front of Hanabi. What are these? Asked Hanabi. Divorce papers, said Hinata tearing up. Hanabi's head shot up. What? We spent ages trying to find a law that would allow you to also be my wife, said Naruto. Unfortunately, any law that would have applied to us has long since been made void, said Hinata. The only way I could possibly take a second wife now would be for me to become Hokage, which as you know is no longer possible, said Naruto. Sensei even confirmed that the other village leaders made this decision to ensure I could never legally marry you. Because of this we knew we only had one option, cried Hinata. We decided if you can't be Naruto's wife then I won't be either. It breaks my heart to do this, but if it means you'll be considered an equal in this relationship, I'll divorce Naruto. That way neither of us will be his wife, but we'll both be his romantic partner. This decision was very hard for Hinata, but she was willing to do it to make her sister happy. Hanabi picked up the papers and scanned them. Just say the word and Hinata and I will both. Naruto trailed off as Hanabi started tearing up the papers. What are you doing? Asked Hinata, who was now more confused than upset. You guys are not divorcing because of me, stated Hanabi, still tearing up the papers. But don't you want to be an equal partner in this relationship? Asked Naruto. More than anything, but that doesn't mean I want you two to divorce, said Hanabi, tearing the shredded paper into smaller shreds. But I thought it upset you that I was married to Naruto and you weren't, stated Hinata. It does a little, but I don't mind, said Hanabi, who had finished shredding the papers. I'll admit it does upset me a little that the village refuses to acknowledge me as Naruto's wife, but knowing that Naruto does makes me feel better and that's all that matters. That's why I ask him to repeat it every time he says it, because it means the most coming from him. So, you're okay with the fact that you can't legally become my wife? Asked Naruto. You've already said I could, said Hanabi. What are you talking about? We said there's no way I can legally marry you while I'm married to Hinata, stated Naruto. From what I recall you said you could marry me if you become Hokage, Hanabi clarified. It may not be possible now, but as I said before, I believe a day will come where the village practically begs you to become Hokage so you can lead and protect them. When that day comes, if you ask me to marry you, I will say yes without a moment's hesitation. Hanabi got up and started taking the shredded paper to the bin. Besides, Hinata deserves to be your wife. She was your first love, and she fell in love with you first. That's the drawback to being the younger sister, but it's one I accept. You say I deserve to be your wife just as much as Hinata, well, I agree. She deserves to be your wife right now and nothing should prevent her from being your wife. I may have to wait a few more years to also become your wife, but it's a consequence I'm willing to accept. It also gives us another reason to stay in the village, as you'll become Hokage quicker if you stick around, Hanabi ranted before looking angrily at the shredded paper. This is not the solution. She then angrily threw the paper in the bin and slammed the lid. Hinata and Naruto were just glad she didn't wake the children. I didn't think she'd get this mad over this, whispered Naruto to Hinata. Neither did I, whispered Hinata. Hanabi then marched over to them angrily. Get up, she said, pulling Naruto and Hinata to their feet. Where are we going? Asked Naruto. To do the same thing we always do when the children are asleep, said Hanabi, pulling them towards their bedroom. You really want to do this now? Asked a surprised Hinata. Of course, I think we all need to release some tension, answered Hanabi, still dragging them. I have heard doing it while angry can make it more enjoyable, joked Naruto, trying to make light of the situation. Why do you think it called makeup? Asked Hanabi. After dragging them into the bedroom, Hanabi shut the door behind them. Life continued as normal for the Uzumaki family after that. The only difference was that they avoided the topic of making Hanabi an equal member of their relationship, as it clearly upset her. Hanabi had made it quite clear that as far as she was concerned, she was an equal member of the relationship, and while the village and the Land of Fire didn't acknowledge her as Naruto's wife, she was just happy that the Uzumaki family did. She also held firm in her belief that Naruto would still become Hokage someday, and on that day she would happily become his wife if he wanted her to. Until then, she was happy being a family with her husband, her sister, and their children. She'd also become more vocal about people saying bad stuff about her in public. If she was with her daughter, she would keep her cool, but if she was on her own, she would put others in their place. From here, they were able to grow more happily as a family unit. Despite this, even though Hanabi would have to wait to potentially become Naruto's legal wife, they still felt she deserved a proper wedding. One night, Hanabi was surprised to learn that her father had requested their presence at a formal event and even requested that they wear their nicest kimonos. They also been told this was a dinner for adults only, so they'd asked Kurenai if she could watch the children for the night. Thankfully, she agreed. They did as asked, and Hanabi was currently looking at herself in the mirror. Her hair was done, and she was dressed as nicely as possible. "All ready to go?" asked Hinata, coming out of the bathroom. "Yes. Do you know what this dinner is about?" asked Hanabi. "Father didn't say. He just told me where he wanted us to go and when to be there," answered Hinata. "Weird. Father isn't one to keep a secret like that," stated Hanabi. "Maybe it's something he had to keep quiet about and didn't want to risk the word spreading," suggested Hinata. "I guess, but I have a feeling this is related to the Hyuga clan, so I'm amazed we'd even be allowed to attend something like this," stated Hanabi. "Don't forget, Father said that regardless of what name we have, we will always be his daughters. He's probably still going to invite us to clan events to ensure people remember that," stated Hinata. "Good point. Still, I wish he'd given us a little more warning about this," said Hanabi, looking at herself in the mirror. "I'm not sure if I had enough time to get ready." Hinata walked up to her and put her hands on Hanabi's shoulders. "You have nothing to worry about. You look beautiful," stated Hinata. "Thank you, big sister," smiled Hanabi. Hinata smiled back, then thought to herself, "Don't worry, Hanabi, it'll all be worth it. Something tells me this is going to be the best night of your life." After they had finished getting ready, Hinata and Hanabi set out for the event their father requested they be at. Naruto had been invited as well, but he had been forced to decline, as he had been requested for a mission the morning the invitation had been sent out. Hanabi followed Hinata but then became confused when Hinata took an unexpected turn. "Aren't we going to the Hyuga compound?" asked Hanabi, who knew they had just missed the turnoff. "No, father told me we were to meet him in a specific location," answered Hinata. "Where?" asked Hanabi. "You'll see," smiled Hinata, not wanting to ruin the surprise. Unknown to Hanabi, this was all a ruse. There was no event their father had requested their presence at, and Naruto wasn't away on a mission. This is just what they told Hanabi so she wouldn't figure out what they were up to. However, Hanabi started to get suspicious when she recognized their surroundings. "Wait, isn't this?" asked Hanabi, who remembered a magical day that had occurred here before. "Yes, this is where Naruto and I got married," answered Hinata. "What are we doing here?" asked Hanabi. Hinata smiled and said, "I thought you would have figured it out by now." Eventually, they arrived at the same wedding venue where Naruto and Hinata had tied the knot. It was done up in a similar fashion to how it was on Naruto and Hinata's wedding day, and there were quite a few people there waiting for them. It was at this point Hanabi started to realize they weren't at a Hyuga social event, because there were many people there she would never expect to see. On one side there were many members of the Hyuga clan, including her own father, and on the other side were all the people who had shown support for them, after the news of Hanabi's relationship with Naruto and Hinata had become public. Boruto and Nitsuko were also there, being held by Sakura and Kurenai respectively. But what was most surprising of all was that Naruto was there, and he was dressed the same way he had been during his wedding to Hinata. Is this a wedding? Asked Hanabi. She wished this could be her wedding, but that wasn't possible. At this point, Naruto approached the sisters. Hanabi, I know you said you're happy to wait to become my legal wife as you still believe I'll become Hokage someday, but Hinata and I have discussed it and we feel that just because I can't legally marry you doesn't mean you can't have a wedding. Stated Naruto. Hanabi couldn't believe what she was hearing. You said you didn't care if the Land of Fire doesn't acknowledge you as Naruto's wife, as long as the Uzumaki family does, stated Hinata. So, we decided to do what we had to make it official in the eyes of both our family and the people who support us, said Naruto. So, you mean, she feared to say the words in case they weren't true. Yes, but as we keep saying, you're an equal to us in this relationship, meaning we'll only do this if you want to, said Naruto. And I want to give you the same moments I gave Hinata. Naruto then got down on one knee. We won't be able to make it official until I become Hokage, but on this day with our friends and family as witnesses, Hanabi will you? Naruto trailed off as Hanabi took his hand. She had tears forming in her eyes. Naruto just hoped they were tears of happiness. Yes, I'll marry you, she said. Naruto stood up and hugged her. Are you sure, even though it could be years before we make it official? Asked Naruto. I'm sure. As I said, you will become Hokage one day and I'll happily wait for the day we can make it official, answered Hanabi. I've long since accepted that Hinata was your first love before me, but I don't care. All I care about is that you love me too. And I love the idea of becoming your wife, even if it means I'm your second wife. Naruto chucked. How did I manage to end up with the two best women in the Leaf Village? Asked Naruto. By being the best man in the Leaf Village, stated Hinata. At first it seemed like the three of them were going to hug forever. Guys, interjected Kakashi. I hate to interrupt your moment, but we're all here for a reason. Oh right, laughed Naruto. He took Hanabi's hand and led her to the front of the altar, as Hinata went to join the wedding guests. She also took over holding Boruto, who was fussing in Sakura's arms. Sorry, there aren't as many guests as there were at my wedding to Hinata, stated Naruto. It's okay. Something tells me these are the only people I want at our wedding, because they're the only people who accept the union between the three of us, said Hanabi, smiling at her soon-to-be husband. You didn't have to do this, but I'm so glad you did. After reaching the altar, the ceremony proceeded as normal. They had made sure not to make it an exact copy of Naruto and Hinata's wedding, because they wanted Hanabi to know that this was her special day. Because of this, Naruto had written up a new set of vows for Hanabi. In them, Naruto promised to love Hanabi for as long as he lived and that no matter what she was his wife just as much as Hinata was. Hanabi in return said her own vows, although she hadn't been able to prepare anything, she spoke from the heart and said exactly what she wanted to say. I always feared, I would never get to be loved by you the same way you loved my sister, and yet things have turned out for the best. Not only do I have the best sister in the world for allowing me to share her husband with her, but I also know that I am now loved by the man I love with all my heart. And although one could argue our situation isn't ideal, they also can't argue that this isn't the best situation we could have hoped for between the three of us. I love you, Naruto, and I always will, so I don't care that I have to share you with my sister, because it means we both get to be loved by the man we love. After they had been declared husband and wife, Naruto presented Hanabi with a ring, identical to the ones worn by him and Hinata. Hanabi held her hand out without hesitation and let him slip it on her finger. The two of them kissed and everyone in attendance applauded. Years passed and the trio continued to live as a happy family. Other villagers continued to judge them, but it calmed down as they grew to accept there was nothing they could do to change the situation. They also knew it would end badly for them if they did anything to harm Naruto's family, so they kept their distance and tried to keep their opinions to themselves. Even after a decade of marriage to his wives, the Leaf Village still refused to change their minds on Naruto becoming Hokage. especially since they knew that if they ever changed their minds, Naruto would make Hanabi his wife as soon as possible. They just couldn't deal with the idea of their leader being a man with two wives. Some opinions were changing, however. Kakashi was getting older, and they knew he couldn't lead and protect them forever. During this time, Kakashi continued to insist that Naruto was the best choice for the job and refused to retire until they relented. Some of the leaders were starting to have doubts about their decision. Over the years, Naruto continued to be a hardworking defender of the village, and they still hadn't produced another shinobi that surpassed him in strength. Despite the controversy surrounding his home life, it couldn't be argued that he was still most suitable for the job. The leaders were also starting to see there was nothing truly tyrannical about his relationship. He showed nothing but affection for his wives, and he was a loving and devoted father to his children. This led some of the village leaders to wonder if Naruto would show the same dedication to protecting and leading the village, and if they should have given him a chance. Nevertheless, it had to be a majority vote, and there were still a few leaders who stood firm in their belief that it looked bad to be led by a man with two wives. As the years passed, however, the opinions went more in their favor. While it still hurt Naruto to be denied his dream, he absolutely loved the life he currently lived. He continued working as a Jonin-level shinobi, which allowed him to support his family. Hinata and Hanabi also continued their work as shinobi, but they had an arrangement with Kakashi that ensured that at least one of them would always be home with the children. Naruto was still required to leave home regularly to go on missions, but his time at home was his own. He spent every second he could with his family, and before long, both he and his wives had started training their children in the ways of the shinobi. Not just to teach them the value of hard work and to make them strong, but to also ensure they could defend themselves against those who wouldn't treat them kindly. Boruto and Nitsuko grew to be very close over the years, doing nearly everything together, viewing each other not only as siblings, but best friends. Things wouldn't always be easy for the siblings over the years, however, as many believed Boruto would merely ride on the coattails of his father's success. Things were worse for Nitsuko, however, as many still saw her as nothing more than Naruto's illegitimate child. Two children were running and jumping through the Leaf Village, which had grown into a city. They seemed to be in a hurry, but little did the onlooking villagers know, what they had to do wasn't very important, it was something only children would be concerned with. "Hurry up, Nitsuko, or they'll sell out," called Boruto, who had grown into a 12-year-old preteen boy. "I'm running as fast as I can, brother," answered Nitsuko, Boruto's 11-year-old half-sister cousin. Boruto was blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and dressed in a white shirt covered by a black jacket along with matching pants. Nitsuko, on the other hand, was brown-haired, with her mother's white eyes, and wore a yellow, more traditional long-sleeved top and short shorts. Before long, the two children found themselves on the roof of the train that ran through the village. "I can't believe this was the last day they were selling this. The limited edition green chili hamburger," exclaimed Boruto gleefully. The two had gone to Boruto's favorite restaurant, Thunder Burger, and purchased two separate burgers that would be discontinued by the end of the day. "Why were you so eager to get this?" asked Nitsuko, who was a little tired from chasing after her brother. "Because it sounds awesome. Are you gonna eat yours?" asked Boruto, who was prepared to swipe the burger from Nitsuko's hands. "I wouldn't have bought it if I wasn't," answered Nitsuko, taking the burger out of Boruto's reach. The two of them took a bite on the burger and instantly twitched at its spiciness. "What's in this stuff?" asked Nitsuko as the two siblings slurped the soda that had come with the meal. "No idea, but it's delicious," laughed Boruto. "I can see why you were so eager to get it before it sold out," stated Nitsuko. "And you were rushing so much, I'm amazed you decided to stop and invite Shikadai." "Why wouldn't I? He's my pal and I didn't want him to miss out. His loss if he chose sleep over this," stated Boruto. "Still, I don't know why he had to look so agitated over such a simple question. That's just how he is. Your mother tells me that his father was just like that when he were younger, stated Natsuko. His dad doesn't seem much different from him now, laughed Boruto. And yet I have a feeling that if you weren't around my mum would be asking Shikadai to keep an eye on me instead. Well, auntie knows he's got a good head on his shoulders, added Natsuko. And his dad is the one who most regularly accompanies him on missions. I think that's because his team's a little split up now. Aunt Sakura mostly works at the hospital now and Uncle Sai has his own duties. They did mention some other former teammate, but I heard he's always away now. Guess Dad just teams up with whoever is available now, stated Boruto. Yeah, well, just think, it won't be long until we're going on missions with teammates, said Natsuko. It's starting earlier for you than it is for me, joked Boruto. Both Boruto and Natsuko were due to start at the Ninja Academy the next day. Despite being a year younger, Natsuko would be attending early at the request of their parents. Because of their close friendship with the Hokage, Kakashi had pulled some strings to push up Natsuko's start date. All she had to do was prove that she could keep up with the other students. Her upbringing had allowed this to be a simple task for her. I don't know what's weirder, that old man Kakashi is okay with this or that our parents are so insistent that we attend together, groaned Boruto. If I didn't know any better, they enrolled you early to keep an eye on me. Well, no disrespect, brother, I may be younger but I'm arguably the more responsible one, joked Natsuko. Hey, you have moments of immaturity too, countered Boruto. Natsuko turned away and blushed at this. While she was the quieter and more polite sibling, she was prone to the occasional outburst of anger that would leave anyone present horrified. She didn't like it when this happened, but it only happened because of what others said about her and her mother. I don't even know why we need to join the academy, said Boruto. From what my mum has told me, we're probably stronger than our parents were when they graduated. Due the village's negative reaction of their parents' relationship, Naruto, Hinata and Hanabi had made the decision to train their children in the ways of a shinobi from a young age. They had progressed exceptionally, and their parents already felt that both were close to the strength of a chunin. This made attending the academy seem a little pointless to Boruto. Well, I guess it's just a formality everyone must go through, said Natsuko. Besides, our parents are all ninja, it's only natural they're keen for us to become ninja. I know that, I'm just amazed they're so keen for us to be ninja of this village, sighed Boruto looking to the horizon. Natsuko knew what he meant. The prejudice the village held against their parents had continued to the children. While Natsuko had received worse treatment due to her mother not being legally married to their father, Boruto hadn't been spared from prejudice either. Many had called his mother a doormat and pathetic for not divorcing his father for his affair, and weren't afraid to say it to his face when his parents weren't around. You still annoyed that we still live in this village despite the way they treat our family? Asked Natsuko. A little, but I understand our parents' reasoning for staying, answered Boruto. They didn't really have a better choice. And they've got friends who've always been kind to us, added Natsuko. Yeah, I guess it would be hard to leave them behind to start over someplace else that would likely be equally cruel to us, stated Boruto. And let's face it, Grandpa would have a mental breakdown if we moved away. He would definitely be sad, laughed Natsuko. Still, I can't figure out why Dad is so keen to defend a village that clearly hates us, stated Boruto. You still wondering why he's aiming to be Hokage? Asked Natsuko. A little, aside from the position allowing him to marry your mum, I can't see how it would benefit us, said Boruto. Well, you've seen how strong Dad is, with him leading and defending the village it would be the safest place in the world, argued Natsuko. This made Boruto a little cross. I'm not sure if this village deserves Dad's protection, he countered. Brother, you've heard the stories our parents told us, I'm not sure how true they are, but they said that in addition to saving the village multiple times, he's also saved the entire world. If that's the case, how can they resent dad for something as small as having 2 wives? Questioned Boruto. Maybe they just can't understand dad's ability to love 2 women, stated Natsuko. That doesn't excuse the way they treat us. Especially you and your mum, said Boruto. I know, but my mum says us being a big happy family is all that matters, and I think we're just that, argued Natsuko. Our parents have shown us nothing but love and have done everything they can to prepare us for the difficulties of life. I guess you got a point, sighed Boruto. Still, even ignoring the fact that dad saved the entire world, old man Kakashi has shown us nothing but support. You'd think that would be enough to get everyone to back off. They just use the excuse of him having a soft spot for his former student. Dad said the Hokage is a leader, not a tyrant, which likely means that even if the Hokage supports something, doesn't mean everyone has to, stated Natsuko. Yeah, well, I just wish everyone would back off and mind their own business, said Boruto. I do too, but Dad said the hate should calm down once we become successful ninjas. He said the same happened for him when he was younger, argued Natsuko. As I said before, I'm not sure the village deserves Dad's protection, meaning I don't think it deserves ours either, spat Boruto. You just can't comprehend why Dad wants to be Hokage, can you? Asked Natsuko. No, I really can't, answered Boruto. Why don't you ask him? Asked Natsuko. I did and I still don't understand why, said Boruto. A few years ago, a younger Boruto had found himself unable to sleep and was currently in the living room watching television quietly. Today hadn't been a good day. He had been out with his mother earlier and a couple of older kids had attempted to antagonize him by calling him one of the harem spawn, and saying his mother was a pathetic woman. Boruto hated when others insulted his family, and so he attempted to attack them out of anger. Boruto was already a skilled fighter, so even though they were all bigger than him, Boruto would have likely been the victor had he been allowed to fight. As his mother was present, she overheard the commotion and stopped Boruto before he could do anything. This just caused more torment from the other kids as they saw this as another example of Hinata being unable to stand up for herself. Thankfully, the other kids' parents were nearby and told them to get away from the harem spawn and his doormat of a mother. This made Boruto want to attack them again, but Hinata held him in place. While they were walking home, Boruto asked his mother why she didn't let him stand up for their family. Hinata's response was, because it will only make our situation worse. She didn't punish Boruto, however, because she understood the anger he felt. Truth was, she was angry as well. Nevertheless, she pleaded with Boruto to not cause further trouble for them and to just ignore others when they said horrible things about their family. Unfortunately, this put Boruto in a bad mood for the rest of the afternoon. Even when his father came home and was greeted happily by the rest of the family, Boruto's mood stayed the same. Naruto of course asked what was wrong, but Boruto refused to answer. Hinata later told Naruto in private, and Naruto completely understood his son's anger. Naruto also hated what the village said about his wives and their children. There were days where Naruto wished he could attack them and force them to treat his family with respect. He didn't, however, as Kakashi had advised him that retaliation would only create more problems. So no matter how much he wanted to, Naruto never responded with violence. He had advised his wives to do the same, which is why Hinata had stopped Boruto from attacking the